After beating Proto Bahamut and slowly grinding the best sigils Granblue Fantasy Relink has to offer, I couldn't help but question if my dream build I was crafting was truly the best. Sure, it does optimal damage, but is this the best use of my sigil slot economy? We only get 12 slots, so each of them must be used wisely. While I can't fill all 12 with damage and do big numbers, is that really helping me clear the fight faster? Just looking at the current optimal build mathematically, we can see it uses Berserker and Glass Cannon. If you don't know what these sigils do, then let me go over them. Berserker increases your attack power, but you can't guard or dodge. Glass Cannon increases your attack power and the damage cap, but if you take any damage, you will now be dizzy and there's no diminishing returns. So if you get hit with another attack, you are now chain stunned and you will eventually die. And since you can't guard or dodge, you could only imagine how many times I've seen people in online play run this build only to be a burden to the group by dying over and over again and depleting the critical gauge just so they could do more damage. But the funny thing is, the amount of time they spent dead and reviving, they actually did less damage because of these sigils. These two sigils are only advised to be run in pre-made groups where they are running a team composition to prevent this from happening. Instead, most players should use these sigil slots to run something that'll help them survive because a dead player does 0 damage. And with that out the way, let's go over the most practical build step by step. Before we go over which sigils we should use, we need to understand the rules of the game that are in place. The game categorizes each sigil in a slot. We have basic stats, which are white on the trait details. This is the smallest pool and can roll on any trait besides themselves. Attack is the second category that has the biggest pool. They have an orange color in the detail page and can roll any other color except themselves. Defense is the second biggest pool and has a blue color. It could only roll support or special as its secondary. What this means is it cannot roll damage cap as a secondary, even though damage cap can roll a defensive trait as a secondary. Support is the third biggest pool with a pink color. This category is very interesting as it can never roll a secondary. Our second category is special. This is the second smallest pool and just like support, it cannot roll a secondary. The last category is signature sigils. While these do fall under the special category when sorting, they are built differently because they can roll any category as a secondary. Now that we have a better understanding of the sigil rules and what pools they fall in, let's go over the most basic build. You'll need 4 damage caps to reach 65 with the Terminus weapon, 3 critical hit rates for 100% critical hit chance. Stamina and Tyranny is usually enough to hit the damage cap on most units. You don't run 2 of the same sigil, since running 2 different ones are multiplicative, which gives you more stats per sigil slot. And this is where we stop for mandatory, as the rest is now dependent on the fight or the character you're using. For example, Proto Bahamut is weak to light, so if you're using Charlotta, this is a dead sigil slot as she's already light element. Pay attention to the enemies you're fighting so you use the most optimal build. We have 15 loadout slots. Let's use them. Signature sigils are also not mandatory because some just suck. For example, did you know Lancelot's unique sigil aren't that good for him? They do not allow him to surpass the damage cap if he's already hitting it, and these effects aren't that spectacular, making both of them suboptimal. I'll use my Nermaya as an example build, as both of her signature sigils are good. So if Nermaya is heading into a fight where she doesn't have elemental advantage, we're already 12 slots in, so let's reduce some of these by adding 5 pluses. We know that damage cap, critical hit rate, stamina, and tyranny are mandatory, and after we went over the rules, we know that the signature sigil can roll any category, which would free up 2 sigil slots right away, while the attack category can roll base stats, saving 3 slots for a total of 5 slots. War Elemental is rare, and I've never seen a plus version, so we'll exclude this. We now have 5 sigil slots for utility, but which one do I pick? Well, that's up to you, cause each character wants something different. After 400 hours of playing the game, I found that quick cooldown is very nice to have. Uplift for quicker skybound arts. Link Together for quicker link attacks and more damage. Improved dodge is just really good. And Cascade does stack with quick cooldown. The pool is so big that you can't go wrong. Just follow the rules of the sigils to plan out your dream build. From the sigils I listed, I know I can't get any support plus, so I'll need to find these on secondaries. Even though I added 5 new traits, I only took up 2 sigil slots, leaving 3 open. Well, I guess we can add another form of damage that bypasses the damage cap with supplementary damage. This deals 20% of the damage of the original hit. So if I hit for 1 million, the secondary hit is 200,000. This caps out at trait level 45, but the only thing that increases is the odds of activating this. I'd rather use tier 4 with a secondary effect, since the odds of me getting a 5+ are really low and not practical for everyone to get 3 good ones. Since we were never getting this additional hit in the first place, you could forego one and add another broken sigil. I'd personally go with Stout Heart from the Knick-Knack Girl. This sigil grants the Stout Heart effect, which prevents you from getting interrupted by your attacks, but it also has a hidden effect. It has a 25% damage reduction. This is me getting hit without it, and now after equipping it. The math is more than 25%, but that's because my defensive mastery tree gives me a little more defense. Speaking of masteries, we haven't gone over those. We can free up a sigil slot by rolling 20% critical hit chance. Depending on your character, rolling 1000 attack lets you hit damage cap without tyranny. Normal damage cap works for basic attacks and unique attacks, so you definitely want this for every character. Skill damage uncap is also a nice DPS increase. The chain attack and skybound arts one are a bit iffy, as they have such a high ceiling to cap, and probably deserves its own video. Well, we freed up 1 trade slot for sure, and probably a secondary, but we're not done there. Our Rightstone can actually free up 1 more slot. By using a level 10 Vitality Rightstone, you only need 1 critical hit rate sigil, since this caps us perfectly at 100. By completing our offensive and collection tab, we're at 50% base critical hit chance. The sigil roll brings us to 70%, and the mastery we just went over brings us at 90. The Rightstone we put on brings us to 99%, and our Terminus weapon with Sigil Booster brings us to 100%. We could potentially save another sigil slot here with the secondary and tertiary, but the odds are so low I wouldn't hold my breath. You can roll damage cap 7 and 5, which adds up to 12. Removing 1 damage cap brings us to 45, and combined that's 57. Our Terminus weapon brings us to 62, and Sigil Booster perfectly caps us at 65. Sadly, we lose that 69, but it's a free sigil slot, so that's huge. A more realistic secondary or tertiary is to look for Cascade. For those using Cascade, you'll want level 4 minimum because the trait caps at level 20, and we can get its full value from Sigil Booster. Any other trait that caps at 20 should be sought after here. Hopefully now you see what a more practical and realistic build looks like, and if you have any unanswered questions, then ask down below. And if you don't know if you're hitting the damage cap still, then consider checking out this video right here, where I go over it step by step with a visual example. Until the next video, I'll see ya.